Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Carmine's Arena, a cultural gourmet of information, if you will, a feast for your mind and soul. And now, without further delay, the man, the myth, the maestro, Carmine Arena.
Greetings and welcome once again to Carmine's Arena, site of conflict and contest, venue for and of resolution. Resolution in terms of focus, remedy, and commitment, both yours and mine, to the preservation, the propagation, and indeed the celebration of Western civilization. When we come into the world, we see the world as it should be. By adolescence, we see the world as it is, and gather with continuing momentum the energies to reform it into the images we first beheld in childhood. At this point, the end all too seductively justify the means, and so we begin to lie, if only to tell the truth as it should be. This condition gives us the liberal's faulty mentality in a hand basket, a basket overstuffed with its self-righteous comforts and nestling comrades all a-cuddle. And in this basket they continue to huddle, plotting, then hurling their certainties at us in aimless direction, each so cool as a rule, yet so simple to fool. Eventually adulthood is attained, but only when we are collectively or individually knocked for a loop, mugged by reality, and choosing to survive, we simply meet looming obstacles head-on, instead of head in the clouds. Enchantment is replaced by enlightenment, and it is by then we fall in love with grandchildren who, thankfully not like one's own offspring, become adorable and nostalgic reminders of our mythical and magical youth and its scope, a scope we no longer question. While these grandchildren sustain resonant moments, allowing us to glimpse once more at what is sacred and what is enduring, as against what is profane, unconstrained, unordained. In short, all the alluring errors and outright blunders our grandchildren have yet to make and model, given their very own impending adolescence, that time when they are least themselves and more like a trendy group image with which they soulfully identify. Excuse me. Identify and cling to. Forgive my my allergy. And cling to with utter stubborn certainty. These resemble the old basket cases who spin round and round in place. Those who escape this wheel of woe escape the grip, grief, and gripe of teenage tribulation. They are to be sought and found, not in our average, but in our altogether deeply gifted, far above average. A cadre of prodigies who find the adult in the child and vice versa, holding in check the cheeky ambitions of certainty. It is to them, it is to each of them to whom we owe our silent, focused, and earnest attention. For a child shall lead them, yes, you and me. Again, I must forgive me for Mykoff. These creative spirits have been granted the prodigious grace of centrifugal force to fly off and away from that repetitive, rotating wheel of willful woe, which makes and mars our all too common developmental mischief. These singularly, miraculously gifted few remain eternally childlike, as opposed to the sluggishly childish, those we roundly outed in the last program, whose sly, staged, and clever tykes they are, who grow to scam first themselves, and later still their troop of unsuspecting dupes. Try thinking of clever as I've learned to do. The word is mostly made up of the word lever, which the clever snap quite early on, along with the reverse of lever, which spells revel. But the clever hardly ever genuinely revel as much as unravel, leaving its hard sea, the hard sea of clever, in the altogether, exposed at last even to its dupes, its patsies, that troop of tainted fools. Consequently, inevitably, we prize the perennial childlike who are bereft of the deficits of certainty and cleverness. These are usually found among the artistic who possess ample respect for the past and the past's mandate to guide and guarantee an ever-changing future, growing directly out of home soil and its genius of place. Such as, and shall ever be, the towering presence and power of folklore, for its native tradition, which gives us the most we can ever expect from certitude, a certitude I'll soon example as inauthentic when it reaches outside of itself to master globalism along with its glut of Googled ego. Tried and true intellectuals and gifted artists know better about man's lust and claim to certainty, and its all too elusive qualities and excessive cyberpunk quantities. Why, even 1 + 1 doesn't always result in 2. For 2 different independent ideas brought together in a synthesis result in not a second idea, but a brand new third. Einstein, Heisenberg, and Gödel, theoretical physicists and math whizzes, who formulated respectively, I should say, the theories of relativity, uncertainty, and incompleteness, understood our species' limitations when it comes to the management and the measurement of certainty. Certainty as predictable outcome. A pupil of long standing who has an endless capacity for learning, and from whom I've learned much, and whose inspiration has proven me a better teacher simply by the will to personal aspiration, emailed me the following, and I quote, "Dear Carmine, given your fascination with fruitful error, I could not resist sending you this incident from Joseph Conrad's relationship with H.R. Lenormand, a pupil of Freud's, who suggested Conrad psychoanalyze Lord Jim and Almayer, both from his great novels. I am nothing but a storyteller, said Conrad. I don't want to get to the bottom. I want to look at reality as something rough and coarse, over which I pass my fingers, nothing more. Lenormand lent Conrad two of Freud's books, but Conrad spoke of Freud with scornful irony, returned them apparently unread, and urged the Frenchman to write a novel on the decline of men who had arrived at certainty. Ah, yes, how succinct, how memorable, the decline of men who had and have arrived at certainty. I, as well as you, am anxious about the sustaining energies required to hold together the genius of Western civilization. I've grown wary and leery of men and women who smugly, arrogantly, and monomaniacally cling to their ever-sticky certainties. I've lived long enough to see these smarties come and go, and long enough still to see the haughtier ilk among them sidling back, maintaining their obsessive certitude in the hope that they will outlive or exhaust you, who are more wisely humble about your grasp and thus immune to the reach toward incessant failure with doom eagerness. They promise hope and change, which is not theirs to give, costing them nothing but the exercise of reckless rhetoric. The rhetoric of Mao Zedong, Pol Pot, Joseph Stalin, Benito Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, and more recent narcissists who have a scrum of power-hungry ideologues, whose followers are merrily certain until they step into the void, devoid of hope and change, devoid of shame. But the failure predictable is never theirs, but ours. Thus, history repeats its Shakespearean warning that all men are bad and in their badness reign, plotting to turn the globe into 5 million square miles of terror, stupidity, and barbed wire. It is well to remember that certainty's calamities have caused world wars, many a bad marriage, and the championing of sacrilege to vex and wither us, along with its know-it-all proponents. These proponents are the traitors of intellect, intellection, and beauty. And here it be well meet, I should say, to remember that in the lowest cycle of Dante's Inferno is the frozen region designed to hold traitors. Lucifer himself, a rebel with so little cause, occupies this icy depth, his heart fixed forever in ice, ice being the antithesis of love, love which is true warmth. Such traitors have let loose a cold evil, whose Miltonian darkness is not the absence of light, but a preternatural entity unto itself, an impenetrable dark presence with a vertebral column. Its bony certainty is the triumph of permanent adolescence. When applied to extra-human phenomena, such as the Earth being round, that planets in their time and place rotate about the sun in our galaxy, then certainty may be affirmed with adequate justification. But certainty in the affairs of men are not so incontrovertible, even when supported by so-called statistical facts. For there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. From times immemorial, facts have been later found to be certainties which are farcical, fraudulent fabrications. We must be alert to that feature in the human animal which defies logic and sophistry. Unfortunately, logic is too heavy a burden for the hoity-toity, and even a heavier burden still for the average academic, it being more important to seem right than ever be contrite. Thus, and ever thus, to ascertain or assert certainty is to stuff shirt the ignorance of the learned. For this reason, I thank heaven for our capacity for error, and am doubly thankful for humor's invention of comedy, which, with religious fervor, sticks pins in our pomposity and overinflated blarney, in short, BS and non-kosher baloney. Excuse me. The transcendent pianist Vladimir Horowitz confessed on more than one occasion to my teacher, "I don't know what I am doing. It's all intuitive, but I know when I'm wrong." Ah, yes, one day when the childlike ascend to paradise, mundane hope and temporal faith can be surrendered, for they will have been confirmed merely by looking about. Ah, but love, the triumph of heaven, will forever be a blessed companion even there. In this episode 86, I invite your help, helping me to impeach certainty. That means that you must focus attentively to the many examples I propose to demonstrate. And because of time constraints, I must demonstrate my examples with a quickened pace, which you've later to flesh out, to probe, to sample. For if you don't trust me, the teller, perhaps you should trust the tale. Firstly, let us commence by briefly examining nature herself. Deception is a quality built into nature's flora and fauna. Take, for example, protective coloration, which is a camouflage against predators, not to mention skunks and insects using uncanny skill to aim chemical calamity at perceived intruders. There is a species of butterfly on the hind wing of which a large eye spot imitates a drop of dew with such divine perfection that a line which crosses the wing is slightly displaced at the exact stretch where it passes through, or better say under the eye spot. All to safeguard it against, and all to deceive a mightier predator who mistakes it for a leaf. Insects of countless variety can win an Oscar by the way they can imitate an inert twig. Ah, but my all-time favorite is the parasite breed of cuckoo bird, who reminds me, oh yes, of human parasites, filled with their me, myself, and I lust, and an I lust for entitlements. Me, myself, and an I lust for entitlements. Now the cuckoo bird's mother, having made it and left behind daddy bird, holds on to her egg for a 24-hour period longer than would be normal, so as to invade another species' nest, presumably too lazy to build her own, where she now lays her mature egg alongside native immature eggs which she devours. The unsuspecting host roosts and keeps warm her impending charges. When and where the cuckoo hatchling emerges, first to overwhelm the smaller hatchlings, mommy cuckoo, carelessly left uneaten. And so the host bird brings up and cares for the cuckoo, or ever so certain that it's her own little chickadee. Pretty nice residing in another's feathered nest. I ask again, don't you recognize the ilk among us who use feathered excuses and reason to justify their breed and brand of certainty? A nested certainty we routinely accommodate. You see what I mean when the genius of place suffers a blow to its IQ, and America becomes host to the uninvited. The uninvited who nevertheless loudly demand care and material comforts. Let us valiantly depart now from nature's deceptive forays on certainties and turn again to man's more cuckoo-type scams of advertisement. For example, all that spiel about new and improved. And do hurry, supply is limited, not to mention false packaging, which, when one buys into certainly, they are so certain that its size will match its content. Fat chance. Then we have the school of knowledge, which purports with certainty that all ways of knowing are political. Nothing my little brain knows can match the preposterous pomposity of that skewed boast. Please, please, send in the clowns. To me, fool that I be, believes that all ways of knowing is the advancement of love. And, my friends, politics and love live light years each apart from the other. Were they ever to blend, we would get statesmanship and fidelity in a 24/7 bond. Meanwhile, we float in a chowder of ever louder partisan certainties. Just think of how shabbily black caucuses are referred to as Uncle Tom simply and only because they refuse to promote, beyond ancient provocation, the culture of victimization and adamantly refuse permanent settlement on the government plantation. Recently, Allen West, a black Republican, decided to muster the courage to join the caucus, if only to shake up the CBC's monolithic ideology, an ideology overstuffed with cocky certainty and avarice. Ah, yes. We have been told that there's been an advance from protozoa to man. Unfortunately, we've only man's word for it. Want another example of certainty? Want another one run amok. Think of the female who asks her all too febrile lover, "Will you respect me in the morning?" And without hesitation he answers, "I'll respect you like crazy." So much for pro-choice when Daddy Carmine encourages pre-choice, particularly when 2 years after that moment Mr. Crazy will barely remember the questioner's name or the color of her eyes. So much for cautionary tales, and that other tale not so cautious. Then there's sports. There one expects to fool the opponent's certainty by faking the direction of the ball, thrown or pitched or kicked, and all for the team's score and delectation of fans a-roar in the crowded arena. Moreover, scientists now calculate a parallel reality. They posit the string theory, this parallel universe of vibrating strands which intrigues me as a musician who willingly vibrates towards bigger truths, following knowledge like a sinking star beyond the utmost bounds of human thought. And once again allow me to remind you that what moves beyond the bounds of human thought is true love, not merely its name, but its active evocation. For true love is never blind. Just because it sees more, it chooses to see less. Lastly, and I see I must hurry. In Exodus 3:14, Moses, approaches a burning bush, which remains nonetheless unconsumed as it burns. As he nears the flames, he hears a commanding voice telling him to remove his sandals, for he stands on holy ground. Moses does as he's told, but asks the voice, "Who are you?" Well, talk about beating around the bush. Forgive me for that. The voice answers, "I am that I am." In the Hebrew, Ayeye, Asher, Ayeye. Harold Bloom, the great literary critic, shows us that this is an audacious pun upon Yahweh as a name, and literally means something like, I will be wherever and whenever I will be. In other words, beyond being itself, beyond and above being, outside of time, like the cosmos, which has no fixed center nor an edge. Thus God himself advises even his elected favorites never to be so prideful as to believe one has arrived at mortal certainty, but ever to quest after it with humility. As you shall be keeping appointments you never made. And so I come to the end, having, I trust, sent certainty into the watery deep. Man's certainty, nothing more nor less than swallowed bait. Now, on a personal note, approximately 6 years ago, a longtime friend of mine stopped me in mid-sentence to say to me in a hushed voice that I was a national treasure. No sooner did I get to relish this observation when I spotted Nicolas Cage coming through an open window. I bolted upright and fled to find sanctuary in Carmine's Arena. I trust you have as well. Until next time, please, do please, keep the faith.
If you have any comments or other remarks, and that I perhaps could even read on some of these broadcasts, please do not hesitate to write to me, Carmine Arena, P.O. Box 1029, Larchmont, New York 10538.